He defied time, faced off against legends, and proved that age has never been a limit for someone with passion running through their veins. His body was sculpted with discipline, his mind forged in consistency. Today, we're diving into the story of a true immortal in bodybuilding. Strength, focus, and tons of inspiration are waiting for you in this video. So grab your pre-workout and come along with us as we dive into the journey of an athlete who became a legend. Get ready for a story that goes way beyond muscle, because some names don't just pass through history, they get carved into it forever. Albert Beckles was born on July 14, 1930, in Bridgetown, the capital of the Caribbean island of Barbados. From a young age, he stood out for his discipline, determination, and love for physical activity. Even with few resources, his mind was set on something bigger. He wanted more than just a simple island life. At 19, he took a leap of faith and moved to London, England, chasing the dream of changing his life. Those early days were rough, low-paying jobs, grueling routines, but Beckles had something rare: laser-sharp focus. It was in the UK that he discovered his true talent for bodybuilding. Back then, the sport was still in its early stages, especially for immigrants, but Beckles found a refuge and motivation in local gyms. Bit by bit, he built his physique with intense training and full-on dedication. No sponsorships. Every penny he made went into food and basic supplements. He was all in. His first official competition came in 1959, the classic Mr. Britain. Even without experience, he wowed the crowd with his shredded physique and confident stage presence. He took second place, a massive achievement for a first-timer. But more than the ranking, it was the moment he realized he was meant to be there. Have you ever had a moment that changed everything after just one try? For him, that stage lit a fire that never went out. In the following years, he kept competing locally and making a name for himself. Even while facing racial prejudice as a black immigrant in a time full of social barriers, he let his talent and fierce discipline speak louder than anything else. His physique did all the talking. He didn't need to shout to be noticed, just stepped on stage and posed. What's interesting is that Beckles didn't skyrocket to fame overnight. His early results were a mixed bag, and for years he hovered around second and third place. But that never broke him. Quite the opposite, it fueled him. He learned from every loss, tweaked his training, fixed his diet, and came back stronger every time. Back then, bodybuilding was more about passion than fame. No social media, no million-dollar deals, just the athlete, the grind, and the stage. And still, Beckles stood out. Slowly but surely, he earned the respect of the British bodybuilding scene, not just for his physique, but for his work ethic and humility. He was the kind of guy who greeted everyone backstage. Do you believe character counts as much as results? With Beckles, it was crystal clear. Albert's early journey wasn't easy, but it was powerful. A young immigrant from a tiny island built, step by step, the foundation of what would become a legendary career. The 1960s were the decade Beckles went from promising newcomer to established figure on the European bodybuilding stage. With every contest, his name carried more weight. He didn't just show up, he took command of the stage. In 1970, his relentless effort paid off with major wins: NABA, Mr. Britain, and Mr. Europe. These weren't lucky breaks. They were the result of years of non-stop hustle. But the best was yet to come. In 1971, Albert made a splash on the international scene by winning the IFBB Mr. Universe, taking home the overall title. This was a historic moment. He became the first black bodybuilder to achieve that honor. At a time when the sport was still mostly dominated by white European athletes, Beckles broke through those barriers. He didn't just win, he opened the door for others. His physique wasn't just big, it was art. He had clean lines, perfect proportions, and symmetry that looked hand-sculpted. But the real showstopper? His insanely peaked biceps. They became his signature. Even today, those arms are a benchmark in the sport. And then there was his stage presence. Albert didn't just flex, he performed. Graceful, composed, and always smiling. He struck that perfect balance between raw power and charm. The judges loved him. The crowd loved him. Back when showmanship mattered just as much as size, Beckles was one of the few who nailed both. When Beckles won Mr. Universe, it was more than just a title. He became a symbol of a new chapter in bodybuilding. He showed the world that talent and hard work don't come with a color, background, or age limit. His victory lit a fire in a whole new generation of black athletes, proving they could rise to the top two, breaking barriers, inspiring others, and leading by quiet example. Those were just some of the ripple effects of his success. That phase of his journey marked the start of Beckles' international era. He began competing on the biggest stages around the world, going toe-to-toe with the best and proving he belonged among the elite. With every new win, his reputation grew stronger. The kid from Barbados was now a global star. Yet, he stayed grounded, respected his rivals, and never forgot the road he had traveled. His rise in the 70s was fast, but it was built on rock-solid foundations. Beckles wasn't some flash-in-the-pan athlete. He earned every bit of success through relentless effort. The 1970s and 80s are often called bodybuilding's golden era, a time of aesthetic physiques, fierce rivalries, and legends being born. And Albert Beckles stood right there among them, sharing the stage with giants like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lou Ferrigno, and later, Lee Haney. Just standing beside those names was already a win, but Beckles wasn't just there to pose. He was there to compete head-to-head. What's even more incredible is that while most athletes peak around their 30s, Beckles seemed to laugh in the face of time. Year after year, he came back even more defined, more symmetrical, more commanding, maintaining a world-class physique well into his 50s. Unheard of. In a sport where youth usually reigns, he proved that maturity could mean excellence, too. The most iconic moment of his career came in 1985 at Mr. Olympia, the biggest stage in bodybuilding. That year, Beckles, at 55 years old, shocked the world by taking second place, right behind Lee Haney, who was around 25 at the time. The age gap was massive, but on stage, none of that mattered. It was all about the physique. That achievement is still remembered today as one of the sport's greatest feats. And it wasn't just a personal win, it changed the game. Beckles shattered the idea that peak performance had an expiration date. After that day, a lot of athletes started questioning their own limits. Where once early retirement seemed inevitable, Beckles showed that with consistency, you could keep going strong into your 50s and beyond. But age wasn't the only thing that set him apart. His physique had a timeless aesthetic, clean lines, a tight waist, and those iconic, perfectly peaked biceps. He embodied a version of bodybuilding that valued balance and beauty over sheer size. Even next to the bigger, bulkier guys, his elegance and stage presence made him unforgettable. What about you? Do you value size or symmetry more? Beckles' battles with legends only added to his legacy, competing alongside icons like Arnold and Ferrigno in the 70s, then going head-to-head with Lee Haney in the 80s. It's a testament to how he spanned generations. How many athletes can say they faced champions from completely different eras and still held their own? Think about what it takes to stay at the top for that long. Beckles didn't just live it, he thrived in it. His consistency was his greatest weapon. The golden era saw plenty of epic stories, but few as lasting as Albert Beckles. He didn't just survive the era, he owned it. His longevity, discipline, and ability to evolve made him a one-of-a-kind competitor. Very few bodybuilders in history can say they competed as much as Beckles. With over 100 official stage appearances, he became the ultimate example of consistency and love for the sport. While many athletes might enter 10 or 15 shows in their entire careers, Beckles just kept showing up. Year after year, there he was, ready to do it all over again. Have you ever found something you love enough to give it decades of your life? He did, and he never let go. One of the most mind-blowing stats in his career is his Mr. Olympia streak, the most prestigious event in bodybuilding. Beckles competed in it 13 times, holding the record for years. And it wasn't just about showing up. He placed in the top 5 in several of those contests. He wasn't there to make up the numbers. He was there to win. In 1982, at 52 years old, he won the Night of Champions in New York, one of the sport's top events at the time. And then, Incredibly, he did it again in 1985. Beckles wasn't just long-lasting. He was dominant, respected, and feared. These wins solidified his place among the most elite athletes of his era. Imagine staying relevant in a sport where most careers burn out after a few short years. Beckles rewrote the rulebook with his own story. He also took home the IFBB World Pro Championships, further cementing his status as one of the all-time greats. But maybe his most symbolic achievement came in the 1991 Niagara Falls Pro Invitational, when he won at 61 years old. That's right, 61, beating athletes decades younger. That one became a historic milestone for the sport. How many times have you heard someone say, "I'm too old for this"? Beckles proved that line is just an excuse. His longevity wasn't luck. It was the result of a balanced lifestyle, smart training, and a mindset that refused to quit. He adapted his physique to each phase of life without sacrificing performance. While others slowed down, he kept going. And most amazing part, he never lost his love for the game. Which raises a real question. Are you taking care of what you love so it lasts? Or are you just chasing quick results? Beckles decided to retire in 1992, closing out a career that spanned 5 decades. A journey that started back in the 50s with his first time on stage and ended with unforgettable wins and worldwide respect. His farewell was everything you'd expect from a legend. No drama, no big decline, just a calm, powerful goodbye to the spotlight. But the legacy he left behind is way bigger than trophies. Beckles' true impact is in the example he set: discipline, patience, and long-term consistency. He broke records, shattered limits, and showed us that greatness has no age limit. Albert Beckles wasn't just a competitor. He was a true student of bodybuilding. His training philosophy went far beyond just lifting weights for the sake of it. He believed in the mind-muscle connection, and that belief shaped his entire career. For him, every rep had to have meaning. No rushed sets, no sloppy form. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself if you're training with purpose or just checking off a routine? Beckles made it clear. Attention to detail is the real key to greatness. One of the cornerstones of his training was volume. He favored long sets, lots of reps, and time under tension. But it wasn't just about quantity, it was quality in every single movement. Even using moderate weights, Beckles squeezed the max out of every rep with laser focus. He used to say it's not about how much you lift, it's about how well you do it. A standout example of his grit was how he tackled his legs, what he saw as a weak point early on. Instead of avoiding the issue, he faced it head-on. He trained legs 4 days in a row, something most athletes wouldn't even consider. He didn't want excuses, he wanted results. And guess what? His legs grew. His obsession with perfect execution really showed in his biceps training, arguably his most famous feature. Those ultra-peaked arms came from a precise approach, slow movements, max contraction. He loved cables and concentration curls, which allowed him to isolate the muscle and control every inch of the rep. He'd even rotate his wrists at the top to enhance activation. Beckles also challenged some of the myths floating around gyms. He didn't believe that high reps automatically led to more definition. For him, hypertrophy came from balance. 8 to 12 reps, solid weight, and total control. No magic tricks, no shortcuts, just nailing the basics day after day. Beyond technique, his biggest principle was persistence. It didn't matter if he was tired, unmotivated, or not seeing results. Training was non-negotiable. Some called it stubbornness. He called it discipline. He knew growth takes time, and that anyone who gives up too soon never sees it through. His chest workouts, for example, blended heavy compound lifts with isolating movements. Flat and incline dumbbell presses for mass, followed by flies, both on the bench and the pec deck for definition and stretch. Variety was key to keeping the muscles challenged and growing. When it came to back training, Beckles stuck to the fundamentals: rows and pull-downs. He used T-bar rows, bent-over barbell rows, front and behind-the-head pull-downs, and even pullovers to work his chest expansion. His goal? Build that wide, deep V-tapered back that turns heads. And everything was done with control, full contraction, and high volume. Albert knew physiques aren't built only in the gym. They're carved in the kitchen too. His diet was strategic, precise, and taken just as seriously as his workouts. The foundation was lean protein, chicken, eggs, fish, and dairy, combined with vegetables, leafy greens, and whole grains. The goal? Deliver the right nutrients in the right amounts at the right time. At one point in his career, Beckles adopted a semi-vegetarian lifestyle, cutting out red meat entirely. And even without it, he kept performing at an insanely high level, proving that you can adapt your diet without sacrificing results. He relied on sources like eggs, dairy, lentils, and legumes to meet his protein and fiber needs. It just goes to show there's no such thing as a perfect diet, only the one that works best for you. No matter what approach he followed, one thing stayed consistent: discipline. Beckles steered clear of processed foods, refined sugar, and heavily industrialized products. Even in the off-season, when many athletes ease up, he stayed locked in. His lifestyle was balanced but firm, and that helped him keep his body ready for whatever challenge came next. Supplements also played a role in his strategy. Beckles used protein powders, amino acids, and vitamins to support his nutrition. He understood that, with the intensity of his training, hitting every nutritional target through food alone wasn't always doable. But he always emphasized one thing: supplements are supplements, not the foundation. His diet reflected emotional balance, too. Beckles was never extreme. He was consistent. If he had a dessert or treat now and then, it was with intention and moderation. No guilt, no binging. That kind of mental control was part of what made him great. A strong mind holds up a strong body. So ask yourself, do you control your eating habits, or do they control you? It's a powerful question for anyone chasing long-term progress. Beckles also believed in eating natural, nutrient-rich foods to stay healthy on the inside, not just look good on the outside. Veggies, fruits, nuts, and plenty of water were staples in his routine. It wasn't just about aesthetics. It was a long-term investment in wellness. How often do you think about health beyond the mirror? At the end of the day, his nutrition wasn't just a plan, it was a lifestyle. He taught us that there are no shortcuts. Your body is a direct reflection of what you give it every single day. Albert Beckles wasn't just a bodybuilding icon. He was also a family man. Married to Arlene Beckles and a proud father, he always made it clear that his foundation was at home. Even with a packed schedule of training, travel, and competitions, his bond with his family ran deep. For him, winning on stage only mattered if it matched the peace and love he had at home. He spent much of his life in Los Angeles, where he found a balance between his career and personal life. There, he built a more stable routine, stayed connected with the bodybuilding community, and prioritized health alongside quality of life. Even after retiring, he never walked away from the gym or his healthy habits. Bodybuilding was in his blood, but so was living simply. Even off stage, Beckles remained a source of inspiration. At 92, he was still training regularly, rocking a physique that shocked everyone around him. That's why many called him the fountain of youth. It was like time was afraid to touch him. His secret? Consistency, clean eating, and above all, a deep love for life. For most people, retirement is the end of the road. For Beckles, it was just a shift in direction. He stayed active in the bodybuilding scene, mentoring younger athletes and attending events. His presence was always met with admiration and respect, because by then, he wasn't just a champion. He was a role model, a true mentor. His longevity also came down to his positive mindset. He believed the body follows the mind, and his thoughts were full of discipline, gratitude, and joy. Even in tough times, he kept his smile and sense of humor. That made people admire him not just for his muscles, but for his heart. Life after the stage was all about balance. He enjoyed the little things, stayed in touch with friends, and lived with a sense of lightness. Despite his fame in the fitness world, he never chased the spotlight. He preferred to be remembered for his integrity, humility, and ability to inspire. When we talk about Albert Beckles, we're not just talking about a champion, we're talking about a pioneer. Born on a small Caribbean island and rising to the top of a sport dominated by athletes from wealthy nations, He broke through barriers that once seemed unshakable. In a time when opportunities for black athletes were scarce, Beckles proved that talent, discipline, and persistence have no color or origin. Beckles became a symbol of representation for an entire generation. His presence on stage wasn't just physical, it carried social and political weight. He showed the world that there are no limits for those willing to fight. Young people from all over the globe saw themselves in him. He didn't just inspire bodybuilders. He inspired anyone chasing their dreams despite the odds stacked against them. Beyond the trophies, he used his visibility to support social causes. He showed up at community events, backed local initiatives, and got involved in projects that promoted health and fitness where it was needed most. His commitment to others was just as strong as his biceps. Beckles understood that fame without purpose doesn't mean a thing. He also helped elevate the image of bodybuilding, proving that the sport goes far beyond muscles. With a thoughtful attitude, a respectful voice, and a clean track record, he challenged stereotypes about bodybuilders. People used to say bodybuilders were just muscle. Beckles showed they were also mind, character, and heart. Many athletes stop at the stage, but Beckles understood that his biggest stage was the world. He didn't stay silent in the face of injustice and always spoke up, firmly, but respectfully. He knew that being a role model was a privilege and a responsibility. His story proved that you can compete with integrity, win with humility, and lead by example. His legacy is also built on the small things. Every piece of advice he gave a young athlete, every photo he took with a fan, every talk where he shared his story, those moments created a ripple of inspiration that reached far beyond the sport. Albert Beckles is an icon because he transcended bodybuilding. Sure, he won competitions, but he also beat prejudice, exclusion, and limitation. He became a symbol of perseverance, generosity, and purpose. His cultural and social impact is timeless. Albert Beckles wasn't just a stage champion. He was a champion of life. His journey shows us that limits are often just in our heads, and age is nothing when passion is real. Instead of settling for the ordinary, he chose the path of daily growth. From a young immigrant arriving in England with nothing to a legend who faced giants under the spotlight, his story is a masterclass in resilience. With Beckles, we learn that discipline matters more than raw talent, and consistency beats speed. He sculpted his physique with precision, built his name with effort, and wrote his story with meaning. And in the end, the most impressive thing isn't just the body he built. It's the legacy he left in every mind he touched. If you've ever asked yourself if it's worth pushing forward when things get tough, remember, Beckles kept going strong for 5 decades. So can you. His life is the perfect example that success isn't just about medals and titles. He overcame social barriers, mentored new athletes, inspired generations, and showed that it's possible to live with purpose, even after retiring. It's the kind of story that never gets old. It only grows more powerful over time. So if this journey spoke to you, drop a like on the video. That helps us know we're on the right path and spreads this powerful message even further. And if you love stories of perseverance, dedication, and athletes who change the game, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. We bring you real content with depth and respect for the legends of bodybuilding. While you're here, leave a comment below. What part of Beckles' story inspired you the most? Do you believe longevity in sports is possible with balance and dedication? Let's share ideas. Your voice matters and helps keep this space alive and full of meaning. And if you want to keep diving into the world of classic bodybuilding, click the card on the screen right now. We got an amazing video on another legend who also defied time and left a mark in history. Don't miss it.